And of course, Team USA basketball, they got to stir up some drama. They got to stir up some drama with Paige Bueckers hitting a shot on Caitlin Clark. They got to stir up some drama, and of course, just setting both of them up to get cooked in the comments. It is.
The moment felt unreal, like the air itself had cracked under pressure. Team USA practice was roaring with sneakers squealing and voices barking commands when everything suddenly collapsed into chaos. Paige Bueckers cut hard through the lane. Caitlin Clark turned to reset the drill. And then, impact. A sharp, brutal collision that didn't belong in a routine practice. Caitlin's body snapped sideways, her balance gone, her shoulders slamming the hardwood as gasps exploded from every corner of the gym. For half a second, no one moved. Not the coaches. Not the teammates. Not even the officials standing frozen near midcourt. Paige stood there, chest heaving, eyes locked forward, her face tight with something that looked dangerously close to fury. Caitlin pushed herself up, eyes blazing, shock turning into raw anger as teammates rushed between them. Whistles screamed, but they sounded small compared to the tension vibrating through the room. This wasn't just contact. This wasn't just competition. This was years of comparisons colliding in one violent instant. The golden shooter versus the flawless phenom. The media's favorite versus the league's quiet obsession. Every ignored headline, every ranking debate, every whispered rivalry suddenly had a body count. Within minutes, phones were out. Someone leaked the clip. Slow motion made it worse. Angles told different stories. Accident or intent. Play hard or play dirty. In that one hit, Team USA practice turned into a scandal, and whatever really happened between Paige Bueckers and Caitlin Clark was about to rip the WNBA apart. Long before that collision, long before the gym fell silent, the tension had been quietly fermenting in public praise and private resentment. Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers were never supposed to be enemies. The league sold them as parallel miracles, two paths to the same destiny, two faces meant to lift women's basketball together. But pressure doesn't unite everyone. Sometimes it splits them clean down the middle. Caitlin arrived like a storm that never apologized. Logo threes, defiant celebrations, crowds bending to her will. She carried herself like someone who knew she was changing the game and dared anyone to deny it. Every arena felt louder when she stepped on the floor. Every defender looked smaller. Cameras followed her relentlessly, dissecting every smile, every shrug, every cold stare. With every viral clip, her shadow grew longer, darker, harder to escape. Paige's story moved differently. Grace before force. Precision before chaos. She was framed as basketball purity, the perfect answer to the noise. Analysts called her the complete one, the player coaches trusted, the star who didn't need theatrics. Injuries tested her, silence humbled her, but every comeback fed a quiet fire. She watched headlines crown Caitlin as the future while she fought to reclaim her own narrative, smiling through interviews while grinding her teeth behind closed doors. The comparisons never stopped. Fans picked sides like it was war. Social media turned debate into blood sport. One night Paige trended for efficiency and leadership. The next night Caitlin blew up timelines with another impossible shot. League executives praised both, but the spotlight tilted, and everyone knew it. Endorsements followed noise. Jerseys sold where attention lived. Respect became a currency, and it felt unevenly distributed. Team USA was supposed to neutralize all of that. Red, white, and blue erased rivalries, at least on paper. But practice gyms have memories, and egos don't dissolve just because the jerseys match. Coaches preached unity, yet drills were competitive by design, and every possession felt like an audition. Who would close games? Who would run sets? Who would be trusted when medals were on the line? Caitlin felt the weight immediately. Every miss felt magnified. Every pass that didn't come her way felt intentional. She heard the whispers about her defense, about her fit, about whether her style was too much for international play. She played harder, louder, sharper, refusing to shrink. But frustration simmered when she noticed Paige getting nods of approval, quiet words from staff, subtle validations that never made headlines. Paige noticed everything too. She saw how drills subtly shifted around Caitlin, how the gym buzzed when Caitlin heated up, how attention bent without permission. She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself she was there to win, not to compete for cameras. But old scars don't listen to logic. Each practice felt like a referendum on who truly belonged at the center of the future. Locker room dynamics grew tight. Teammates picked energy carefully, choosing words like stepping through glass. Jokes fell flat. Silence stretched too long. Small looks carried big meanings. A missed rotation became a statement. A hard screen felt personal. Coaches started separating groups, sensing something volatile but unwilling to name it. Outside the gym, the noise was unbearable. Leaked reports about intensity issues. Anonymous quotes about chemistry concerns. Fans flooded comments with conspiracy theories. Some accused Caitlin of being selfish. Others accused Paige of being favored. The league stayed quiet, but silence only fed the fire. By the morning of that practice, tension sat thick in the air. Caitlin arrived early, headphones on, eyes sharp. Paige laced up methodically, jaw set. No words were exchanged, but the distance between them felt electric. Drills intensified. Contact increased. Voices rose. Everyone felt it building, like a storm no one wanted to acknowledge. And when Paige cut through that lane, when Caitlin turned at the wrong second, all of that history surged forward at once, desperate for release, ready to explode into something no apology could undo. The whistles came late, almost apologetic, as if even they didn't want to interrupt what had just detonated. Coaches surged onto the floor, arms out, voices sharp, but the damage was already spreading like a fracture you could hear before you saw. Caitlin's teammates formed a wall around her, anger pulsing through their movements, while Paige backed away slowly, hands up, face tight, eyes burning with something far more complicated than regret. The drill was officially stopped, but no one felt safe enough to breathe. Caitlin's shoulder throbbed as she stood, adrenaline masking the pain just enough to let rage take over. She locked eyes with Paige across the bodies, and the space between them felt hostile, radioactive. "You didn't have to do that," Caitlin snapped, voice sharp enough to cut through the gym. Paige's jaw flexed. "I was finished." Assistants herded players toward opposite ends of the court, barking orders about water breaks and rotations that fooled no one. The head coach pulled Paige aside, whispering urgently, glancing back toward Caitlin like she might explode again. On the other side, Caitlin was surrounded by Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston, hands on her back, murmurs of calm down, mixing with curses under breath. Caitlin nodded, but her eyes stayed locked on Paige's silhouette, burned into her vision. What made it worse was the replay. Someone somewhere had already hit upload. Within minutes, a Team USA staffer's phone buzzed relentlessly. Slow-motion clips surfaced, cropped just enough to make the hit look deliberate. Zoomed angles showed Paige's shoulder dipping. Another clip showed Caitlin turning late. 2 truths, 2 narratives, and a firestorm hungry for blood. The gym might as well have had cameras on every emotion, because online it already did. Practice resumed awkwardly, but nothing flowed. Passes missed. Shots clanged. Communication evaporated. Caitlin played with an edge so sharp it scared even her teammates. Launching shots she usually took with joy now fueled by defiance. Paige answered with cold efficiency, locking in defensively, refusing to look at Caitlin unless absolutely necessary. Every possession felt like a message. Every stop felt like a statement. Then came the locker room. The door slammed harder than intended, echoing like a warning. Jerseys were ripped off in silence, sweat and tension dripping onto the tile. Caitlin sat down hard, replaying the hit in her head, the shock, the way Paige hadn't said a word afterward. Across the room, Paige stared into her locker, fists clenched, breathing slow but heavy. Teammates shifted uncomfortably, caught between loyalty and fear of choosing sides. Someone finally broke. "That was dirty," a voice said, not loud but loud enough. Paige's head snapped up. "Say it to my face," she shot back. Caitlin stood instantly. "I am," she said, voice shaking now, fury and hurt colliding. "You knew exactly where I was." The room froze. Even the air felt thick, suffocating. Paige laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You think everything is about you," she said, and that sentence detonated something ancient. Caitlin stepped forward, eyes blazing. "Funny, coming from the one everyone protects," she fired back. Gasps rippled. Coaches rushed in, but the words were already out, bleeding into everything. That's when the first shocking twist hit. A Team USA executive, face pale, walked in holding a tablet like it was evidence from a crime scene. "We need everyone quiet," he said, voice tight. The room obeyed, not out of respect but fear. He turned the screen outward. It wasn't the viral clip everyone had seen. It was internal footage. Practice film. A different angle. On that screen, clear as day, Caitlin could be seen being called into a quick huddle seconds before the collision. A subtle instruction from a coach. A whispered directive to test the physicality. To see how she responds. The implication hung heavy. This wasn't just player on player. This was engineered pressure. Paige's eyes widened. Caitlin's stomach dropped. The executive swallowed. "This can't leave this room," he said, even as phones buzzed again. "But understand this. There's more scrutiny on this practice than you realize." The room buzzed with confusion, betrayal, disbelief. Caitlin felt sick. Was she set up? Was Paige pushed into something she couldn't pull back from? Or was this footage being used to rewrite the story? Before anyone could speak, another notification pinged. A reporter had posted a thread hinting at internal Team USA tensions and coaching strategies backfiring. Names weren't mentioned, but they didn't need to be. Fans filled in the blanks with surgical cruelty. Paige finally spoke, voice low. "So what, now I'm the villain?" Caitlin looked at her, seeing not just anger now, but something closer to panic. "I didn't ask for that," Caitlin said quietly, but the damage was done. Trust cracked. Motives blurred. Everyone in that room realized they were pieces on a board far bigger than a single practice. As the executive left, warning of statements and damage control, Caitlin and Paige stood on opposite sides of the locker room, both realizing the same terrifying truth. Whatever really happened on that court was no longer theirs to control, and the next leak would decide who survived it. The statement dropped before dawn, polished and bloodless, the kind of language designed to smother chaos without ever touching the truth. Team USA practice incident under review. No injuries reported. Competitive intensity expected. Fans read it and laughed in disbelief. Players read it and felt their stomachs sink. Inside the gym, no one believed a single word of it. By the time the team reconvened, the air had changed. Security was tighter. Media was kept farther back. Phones were discouraged, which only meant everyone hid them better. Caitlin walked in with her jaw set, scrolling through comments she pretended not to read. Dirty player. Diva. Protected princess. Paige arrived moments later to a different storm. Cheap shot. Jealous. Always second place. Neither of them looked at each other, but both could feel the other's presence like a bruise you keep touching. Coaches tried to reset the tone, barking about focus and unity, but the drills turned vicious. Contact escalated. Screens hit harder. Fouls went uncalled. It felt intentional, like the staff wanted to see who would crack next. Caitlin absorbed hit after hit, refusing to flinch, each collision fueling her anger. Paige responded with suffocating defense, her movements precise, almost punishing. Every stop she got felt like proof. Every bucket Caitlin hit felt like defiance. Then the whispers started. A staffer pulled one assistant aside. A hushed argument near the scorer's table. Kathy Engelbert's name floated through the gym like a threat. Caitlin noticed eyes on her, not admiring, not encouraging, evaluating. Paige felt it too, that sensation of being measured, weighed, possibly sacrificed. This wasn't just about a practice anymore. This was about optics, narratives, futures. At the next break, Caitlin sat alone, towel over her head, heart pounding. Kelsey Mitchell leaned in, voice low. "They're talking about limiting your reps," she warned. "Saying it's for balance." Caitlin laughed, sharp and humorless. Balance. The word tasted like control. Across the court, Aaliyah Boston whispered to Paige, her expression tense. "They're spinning it," she said. Quietly, making it sound like you lost control. Paige's chest tightened. Lost control was a career killer phrase. Social media poured gasoline on everything. A former player tweeted cryptically about manufactured rivalries. A popular analyst suggested Team USA was testing market reactions. Clips resurfaced of old games, old fouls, old quotes twisted into weapons. Fans chose sides with frightening intensity. Caitlin jerseys burned in some videos. Paige posters ripped in others. The league's silence felt less like professionalism and more like strategy. The second major twist hit that night. An anonymous email landed in multiple reporters' inboxes, subject line simple and lethal. Practice wasn't the first time. Attached were screenshots, text messages, dated weeks earlier. Conversations between Team USA staff discussing provoking competitive responses, leaning into friction, and seeing which star bends and which breaks. Names were redacted, but context screamed loudly enough. One message stood out, chilling in its clarity. If contact happens, it tells us who can handle Olympic pressure. The fallout will sort itself out. The story detonated instantly. News alerts screamed betrayal. Talk shows demanded answers. Fans turned their rage upward, accusing the league of playing with careers like chess pieces. Caitlin stared at her phone in disbelief, hands shaking. So it wasn't just her imagination. She hadn't been paranoid. She'd been positioned. Paige read the same messages and felt something crack inside her chest. That hit, her hit, had been bait. Emergency meetings were called. Lawyers appeared. Statements were drafted and redrafted until they said nothing at all. Caitlin was summoned first, ushered into a quiet room with league representatives who smiled too much. They spoke about resilience, about image, about how stars carry responsibility. "We need you steady," one of them said. Caitlin's eyes hardened. "So you needed me hurt?" she shot back. Silence answered. Paige's meeting was colder. Different faces. Different tone. Words like accountability and composure floated dangerously close to accusation. "We have to consider public perception," an official said. Paige leaned forward, voice trembling. "You told us to play physical," she said. "You set the stage." The official didn't deny it. He just didn't confirm it either. That night, Caitlin and Paige crossed paths alone in the hallway, no cameras, no teammates. For the first time since the collision, they stopped, really looked at each other. Anger was still there, but now it was tangled with something heavier, realization. "They used us," Caitlin said quietly. Paige nodded once, jaw tight. "And they'll let us destroy each other if it protects them." The silence that followed felt dangerous. An alliance flickered, fragile and risky. Two stars realizing the same enemy might be bigger than either of them. But before anything could form, another alert buzzed. A major outlet published a breaking update. Team USA was considering roster adjustments ahead of upcoming exhibitions, citing chemistry concerns. No names were mentioned, but the implication was brutal. Someone was about to pay for this. Caitlin felt her pulse roar in her ears. Paige's hands curled into fists. Whatever truth was coming next wouldn't just decide who was right. It would decide who stayed standing when the league finished covering its tracks. The backlash didn't roll in. It crashed like a tidal wave that refused to stop. By sunrise, the story wasn't just trending, it was dominating everything. Sports shows led with it. News outlets framed it as a power scandal. Hashtags split the internet clean in half. Hashtag protect Caitlin. Hashtag justice for Paige. Hashtag Team USA cover-up. Every opinion came with venom. Every clip dissected like evidence in a public trial. Caitlin woke to thousands of notifications she never asked for. Some were love, fierce, and defensive, fans swearing she was targeted, sacrificed for spectacle. Others were brutal. Accusations of entitlement. Claims she couldn't handle physicality. Strangers debating her toughness like it was currency. She stared at her phone until the words blurred, chest tight, anger and exhaustion twisting together. This wasn't criticism anymore. This was identity on the line. Paige's reality was just as vicious, only colder. Her name trended beside words like dirty, jealous, exposed. Old injury clips resurfaced with cruel captions. Analysts questioned her temperament. Former coaches were quoted out of context, hinting at emotional volatility. Paige sat alone in her room, phone face down, breathing slow, trying not to shatter. She'd played by every rule. Trusted the system. And now the system was letting her burn. The league's response poured gasoline on everything. Kathy Engelbert released a statement promising transparency, while offering none. "We take these matters seriously." Fans read between the lines and saw avoidance. Protest posts flooded comment sections. Sponsors began watching closely. Silence from Team USA leadership felt intentional, calculated, and fans knew it. They always know. Inside the team, fractures deepened. Practices were shortened. Conversations were guarded. Players whispered in corners, afraid of being quoted, afraid of choosing the wrong side. Some rallied around Caitlin, protective and loud. Others quietly distanced themselves, worried association might cost them minutes, opportunities, futures. Paige felt the shift acutely, fewer smiles, fewer casual check-ins. Not hostility. Something worse. Caution. Caitlin tried to train through it, but every drill felt heavy. She could feel eyes tracking her reactions, her body language, her tone. One wrong look could become tomorrow's headline. One sharp word could be spun into diva behavior. She swallowed frustration until it tasted like metal. At night, she replayed the hit over and over, wondering how something so fast had detonated her world. Paige stopped sleeping. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the collision from every angle social media had fed her. Slow motion. Freeze frame. Judgment. She wanted to scream the truth, that she'd been pushed, steered, manipulated. but every advisor warned her not to speak. Let it pass. Don't make it worse. Worse than what? She already felt erased, rewritten into a villain she didn't recognize. Fans took it further. At games, chants turned ugly. Booing followed Paige onto the court in places she'd once been adored. Caitlin faced her own hostility on the road, defenders playing her harder than ever, hits landing with a little extra force. Officials swallowed whistles. The message was clear: survive it, or it will swallow you. Behind closed doors, executives scrambled. Sponsors called. Olympic committees asked questions. Lawyers drafted contingency plans. Someone needed to absorb the blame, and the easiest targets were always the players. Rumors leaked of behavior clauses, of image concerns, of difficult decisions. The emotional toll finally cracked the surface when Caitlin broke down after practice, tears spilling despite her best effort to stay composed. Cameras caught it. Clips went viral within minutes. Sympathy surged, then backlash followed. Too emotional. Not tough enough. Paige saw the clip and felt a sharp, unexpected ache. She recognized that look. She'd worn it herself, alone, unseen. That night, Paige typed a statement. Deleted it. Typed again. Deleted it again. Caitlin did the same. Both knew that one sentence could change everything. Or end everything. The pressure wasn't just external now. It was internal, crushing, isolating. Then, just as the noise reached its loudest point, a new rumor surfaced. Quieter, more dangerous. Whispers that an internal report existed. A report naming names, detailing decisions, proving intent, and that someone somewhere was deciding whether it would ever see the light of day. Caitlin received a message from an unknown number. If the truth comes out, it won't protect everyone. Paige received a different one seconds later. Be careful what you ask for. The league always chooses a sacrifice. Both stared at their screens, hearts racing, realizing the fallout wasn't ending. It was tightening its grip, and the next move would decide who the league was willing to let fall. The report existed. That much was no longer a rumor. It was real, it was finished, and it was sitting on a server guarded by lawyers and silence. Caitlin learned that first, not from the league, but from someone who shouldn't have been talking at all. A late-night call. A voice shaking. They compiled everything, the source whispered. Emails, practice directives, internal debates, and player evaluations tied to market impact. Caitlin's stomach dropped. Market impact. That was the phrase that changed everything. Paige found out hours later, in a different way. Her agent burst into the room, face pale, phone clenched like a weapon. They're not deciding what's true, he said bluntly. They're deciding what's survivable. Paige felt cold spread through her chest. For who? She asked. He didn't answer right away. He didn't have to. The report wasn't neutral. It never was. It didn't just document what happened, it ranked it. Who benefited? Who lost control of the narrative? Who could be rehabilitated? Who posed a long-term branding risk? Paige's name appeared beside words like volatility and perception management. Caitlin sat next to polarization and fan dependency. Two different threats. Two different solutions. A private meeting was called. No media. No teammates. Just executives, lawyers, and the two players whose collision had cracked the league open. The room felt sterile, surgical. Kathy Engelbert spoke calmly, carefully. Too carefully. She talked about protecting the game. About the Olympics. About momentum. Caitlin listened, jaw tight, as the language danced around accountability without ever touching it. Then the offer came. Not official. Not written. Just implied with devastating clarity. The league would frame the incident as competitive excess fueled by miscommunication. Coaching decisions would be reviewed. No one at the top would fall. In return, Caitlin would be positioned as resilient, wronged but strong. Paige, however, would need to show accountability. A statement. A pause. Maybe a temporary step back for growth. Not a suspension. Something softer. Something quieter. Something that wouldn't scare sponsors. Paige felt the blood rush to her ears. You're asking me to take the fall, she said flatly. An executive shifted uncomfortably. We're asking you to protect the sport, he replied. Caitlin's head snapped up. By sacrificing her? Silence answered. That's when the real twist surfaced. The report didn't just detail the practice incident. Buried deep was a section marked projected outcomes. Scenarios. One of them outlined a future where Paige's role diminished while Caitlin's expanded, citing fan engagement metrics and broadcast data. It was dated weeks before the collision. Before the hit. Before everything. Paige laughed, hollow and sharp. So this was decided before we even stepped on the court, she said. Caitlin felt something break inside her chest. All the doubt, all the paranoia, suddenly aligned into something ugly and undeniable. This wasn't chaos. It was choreography. Caitlin stood. I'm not doing this, she said. The room stiffened. If she goes down for this, I go public. Lawyers leaned forward instantly. Warnings spilled out, contracts, clauses, consequences. Paige stared at Caitlin, stunned. Don't, she whispered. They'll crush you. Caitlin shook her head. They already tried. The meeting ended without resolution, which in itself was a decision. Hours later, leaks began appearing, selective excerpts from the report, framed just enough to muddy the truth. Commentary shifted subtly. Paige's name appeared more often in negative contexts. Caitlin's less so. The machine was already moving. That night, Caitlin and Paige met again, away from everyone. No agents. No cameras. Just two players sitting on the floor of a dark gym, lights half off, the echo of bouncing balls long gone. If I speak, Caitlin said quietly, they'll say I'm unstable. If you speak, Paige replied, they'll say I'm proving their point. Paige pulled out her phone, hand trembling. I have something, she said. Screenshots. Voice notes. Stuff my agent told me to save. Caitlin swallowed. I have things too. They looked at each other, the weight of it crushing. Together, they could expose everything. Separately, they'd be picked apart. A notification lit up both their screens at the same time. Breaking news. Team USA expected to announce roster updates within 24 hours. Paige exhaled slowly. They're forcing the clock, she said. Caitlin nodded, pulse roaring. Somewhere between silence and explosion, a decision waited. One that would either shatter the league's carefully built image or end a career in a way no injury ever could. And as they sat there, phones glowing in the dark, both knew the next move wouldn't just change their futures. It would decide whether the truth ever had a chance to survive. The report existed. That much was no longer a rumor. It was real, it was finished, and it was sitting on a server guarded by lawyers and silence. Caitlin learned that first, not from the league, but from someone who shouldn't have been talking at all. A late-night call. A voice shaking. They compiled everything. Paige found out hours later, in a different way. Her agent burst into the room, face pale, phone clenched like a weapon. They're not deciding what's true, he said bluntly. They're deciding what's survivable. Paige felt cold spread through her chest. For who? She asked. He didn't answer right away. He didn't have to. The report wasn't neutral. It never was. It didn't just document what happened. It ranked it. Who benefited? Who lost control of the narrative? Who could be rehabilitated? Who posed a long-term branding risk? Paige's name appeared beside words like volatility and perception management. Caitlin sat next to polarization and fan dependency. Two different threats. Two different solutions. A private meeting was called. No media. No teammates. Just executives, lawyers, and the two players whose collision had cracked the league open. The room felt sterile, surgical. Kathy Engelbert spoke calmly, carefully. Too carefully. She talked about protecting the game. About the Olympics. About momentum. Caitlin listened, jaw tight, as the language danced around accountability without ever touching it. Then the offer came. Not official. Not written. Just implied with devastating clarity. The league would frame the incident as competitive excess fueled by miscommunication. Coaching decisions would be reviewed. No one at the top would fall. In return, Caitlin would be positioned as resilient, wronged but strong. Paige, however, would need to show accountability. A statement. A pause. Maybe a temporary step back for growth. Not a suspension. Something softer. Something quieter. Something that wouldn't scare sponsors. Paige felt the blood rush to her ears. You're asking me to take the fall, she said flatly. An executive shifted uncomfortably. We're asking you to protect the sport, he replied. Caitlin's head snapped up. By sacrificing her? Silence answered. That's when the real twist surfaced. The report didn't just detail the practice incident. Buried deep was a section marked projected outcomes. Scenarios. One of them outlined a future where Paige's role diminished while Caitlin's expanded, citing fan engagement metrics and broadcast data. It was dated weeks before the collision. Before the hit. Before everything. Paige laughed, hollow and sharp. So this was decided before we even stepped on the court, she said. Caitlin felt something break inside her chest. All the doubt, all the paranoia, suddenly aligned into something ugly and undeniable. This wasn't chaos. It was choreography. Caitlin stood. "I'm not doing this," she said. The room stiffened. "If she goes down for this, I go public." Lawyers leaned forward instantly. Warnings spilled out, contracts, clauses, consequences. Paige stared at Caitlin, stunned. "Don't," she whispered. "They'll crush you." Caitlin shook her head. "They already tried." The meeting ended without resolution, which in itself was a decision. Hours later, leaks began appearing. Selective excerpts from the report, framed just enough to muddy the truth. Commentary shifted subtly. Paige's name appeared more often in negative contexts. Caitlin's less so. The machine was already moving. That night, Caitlin and Paige met again, away from everyone. No agents. No cameras. Just two players sitting on the floor of a dark gym, lights half off, the echo of bouncing balls long gone. "If I speak," Caitlin said quietly, "they'll say I'm unstable." "If you speak," Paige replied, "they'll say I'm proving their point." Paige pulled out her phone, hand trembling. "I have something," she said. "Screenshots. Voice notes. Stuff my agent told me to save." Caitlin swallowed. "I have things too." They looked at each other, the weight of it crushing. Together, they could expose everything. Separately, they'd be picked apart. A notification lit up both their screens at the same time. Breaking news. Team USA expected to announce roster updates within 24 hours. Paige exhaled slowly. "They're forcing the clock," she said. Caitlin nodded, pulse roaring. Somewhere between silence and explosion, a decision waited. One that would either shatter the league's carefully built image or end a career in a way no injury ever could. And as they sat there, phones glowing in the dark, both knew the next move wouldn't just change their futures. It would decide whether the truth ever had a chance to survive. Next. Part. Call to action target word count. 350 words. This is the moment where silence becomes a choice, and choices become history. What happened between Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers was never just a practice collision. It was a stress test of power, control, and who the WNBA protects when pressure exposes the cracks. And now the clock is running out. Fans can't look away anymore. This isn't about picking sides based on highlights or loyalty. It's about asking why two of the brightest stars in the game were pushed into a collision that benefited everyone except them. Why internal manipulation was allowed to masquerade as competitive culture. Why the league's instinct was damage control instead of truth. Every comment, every share, every demand for transparency matters now. Because leagues don't change from the inside unless the outside refuses to stop watching. The moment fans disengage, the narrative gets buried, rewritten, sanitized. And careers become cautionary tales instead of warnings. Caitlin and Paige are standing at a cliff edge created by forces bigger than rivalry. One wrong headline could label a star uncoachable. One leaked phrase could define a legacy forever. And if the truth disappears here, it sets a precedent that talent is disposable when optics demand it. This is where the audience becomes part of the story. Question the statements. Challenge the silence. Demand accountability from Team USA leadership and the league office. Don't let vague press releases replace real answers. Don't let chemistry concerns become a convenient weapon against players who were following orders. Because if this can happen to Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers, players with massive platforms and global attention, imagine how easily it can happen to anyone else. The next announcement will come soon. Roster changes. Carefully worded explanations. A new distraction. That's how storms get covered up. But scandals only survive in darkness. So keep watching. Keep asking. Keep the pressure on. Because the truth is closer than it's ever been. And whether it breaks through or gets buried depends on who's still paying attention when the league hopes everyone has moved on.